Thank you, Mona. So yeah, today I wanted to use this session to provide you an overview of what has been our journey in the world of climate adaptation in TfL. And then I will hand over to Jason, who will try to bring that back to reality to tell you what that means for the track renewal program. So yeah, obviously with the time I've got, I'm not going to have too much time to spend on any detail. Today it's all about the big picture, just to tell you all the work we've been doing in this space, what we've learned along the way, and how much more work there is to do in this space. Before I do that, I'm sure you all know TfL, but just to remind you that TfL, it's not only the London Underground, it's very well known for. We also manage a number of other modes, such as the DLR, the tram, London Overground, and on surface, we also manage and maintain all the main roads in London and all the associated infrastructure you can think of, cycleway, pavement, bus lanes, etc., etc. Just to give you a feel of the size and the complexity of what we have to deal with every day, I'm just going to throw out some figures. We all love statistics. So we manage 272 stations in LU, and we have 500 kilometers of track. And 350 of these 500 are in tunnels, being in London, obviously. And on the top of that, we have another 260 kilometers of track for LO, DLR, and tram. On surface, between all the roads and the various infrastructure, plus the multiple buildings we own or are the landlord for. I think we are one of the main landlords actually in London. We cover 1.3% of the overall London surface area. It's made of multiple things, including 550 kilometers of roads. We have 350 bridges. We have 40,000 trees. I love this one. And 19,000 bus stops, plus various other elements. So it's just to give you a flavor and a feel. It's big, it's complex, it's obviously also very dense, very urban, and that's what we have to deal with every day. Climate change, I think we've talked a bit about that today, and rightly so. So climate change is already affecting all of us. It's already affecting the city, the country, all around the world. And it's already affecting TfL. And we've been impacted already quite severely, in particular in the summer of 21-22, where we were severely impacted by flooding in London. You might remember that. So we had stations got flooded, track, tunnel got flooded, our road system got flooded. So climate change is here. Climate change is now. It's not going to go away. We need to start acting and do something about it. So our TfL adaptation journey started about 5-10 years ago through our what we call the Lucifer project, which is London Underground Comprehensive Review of Flood Risk. I'm sure some of you might like this acronym. But one of the key milestones really that started the journey was the Mayor Transport Strategy, which was published in 2018, which really had a strong vision, a strong focus, a strong commitment when it came to climate risk and climate adaptation. Another key milestone was an audit. So it was an internal audit we decided to do on adaptation. We wanted to understand more our level of maturity in this space. That was a very comprehensive audit. It had a lot of elements, but I think the two key elements I think we can highlight about these projects was one, the data or the lack of data. It was very, very clear from this audit that we didn't have the data we needed to understand our risk, so let alone being able to know where to spend the money. And I'm not only talking about asset data in terms of location, condition, performance. I'm also talking about climate risk data. Do we actually understand, the impact and the risk that is on us? The answer was probably no. And the other one was the fact that we needed to stop treating adaptation as a set-aside or activity on the top of everything we were doing. I think we all are a bit guilty of creating this team of adaptation that, you know, don't worry, they're going to look after us. We are going to be fine. Obviously, it doesn't work this way. That was quite clear from the audit that we need to start to embed adaptation in everything we do. It needs to be part of our processes, our plan, our systems, everything we do every day. We need to have the climate adaptation element on it. Since then, a lot of things have been done. I will just highlight the adaptation reporting power, which we submitted to DEFRA on 2 occasions, which is basically a climate risk assessment across TfL. That was a lot of work has been put into that. That was done for today and the year of 2050 and 2080. And basically the way we did that was just by trying to gathering professional judgment from all the wide range of stakeholders and colleagues in TfL to try to be as consistent and as comprehensive as possible when it came to that. So yeah, a lot of work has been put into that. I've got the next slide about that. That was actually recognized by the Climate Change Committee, which we are very proud of. So again, I can't really, I think the report is probably available online if you want to look at the detail, but just giving you the key highlights. The first one was the fact we were able to demonstrate that the key risk on us is coming from precipitation, whether it's too low or too high. And we could assess that to be at about 50% of our total risk. The second one was the fact that climate risk will increase in severity over time. It was very clear from our assessment. Another interesting element was the fact that it was quite clear that we need to be much better at improving our incident reporting system to be able to assess the weather element of incidents. We didn't really have the data, again, coming back to data, to be able to do that. And it's quite challenging, but yeah, we're working on it. And we also did a bit of work on climate interdependency, because obviously we fully appreciate that we could impact on others' organization and vice versa, other organizations can impact on us. But we wanted to understand more about that, and I think we might have people in the room who actually took part, because we basically got information and engaged with a lot of stakeholders, all the stakeholders we interface with. So overall, I don't think any of that will be a big surprise. We are at risk, mainly from precipitation, but not only. The risk is going to increase with climate change. We need to be better at improving our weather incident system, and we rely on others, and others rely on us. But I think one of the key benefits of this project was to raise awareness within the organization, because obviously we had to gather information from and involve a lot of colleagues and bring them along on this journey, because obviously, I mean, it's everyone's problem, climate change. It's not just the team looking after this particular project that has to deal with that. And people also have to understand that how they can contribute to it. I think a lot of people are actually willing to help, but they don't necessarily know how. So by bringing everyone on the journey, that was very useful. And the other element was obviously the lack of data I was talking about earlier. That gave us a bit of data, and that gave us a bit of science to back up what I believe before was more perception, to be able to make informed decision going forward. In terms of ongoing work, there is a lot ongoing. This is just a snapshot. But I would just mention the training on biodiversity and climate adaptation we are running. We are trying to run that pan-TfL, so it's coming back to the point that we need to bring the people with us on this journey, and we need to raise awareness and increase our expertise in this space. The London surface water strategy is quite interesting. So it's us working with all our stakeholders in London, and we talked about the guiding mind and stop working in silos. That's exactly what we are trying to do here. So it was on the back of the 2021 incident, the mayor decided to ask all the organizations that have a part to play when it comes to management of surface water and flooding to start working together to break the silos, because obviously the water doesn't understand silos, and it's all systemic, and we need to start working on the catchment based, as we've talked about. So that's us doing exactly that with environmental agency, Thames Water, the borough, the GLA, the fire brigade, anyone that has a part to play. It's early stage, and obviously with all this organization involved, things can be slow, but that's the only way, really, we are going to manage to manage this problem. So we have to accept that, and we start seeing some very good work and very good data coming out of it, in particular in the world of SUDS. So we are very excited about that. The Lucifer project I've mentioned earlier, I won't say too much about that, but it's a flood risk assessment, pan-TFL across everything we do at TFL. It's initially was on LU, it's truly pan-TFL now. We have a GIS system we use where we gather data from anyone that has data on flood risk. So in London, Thames Water and the EA and the GLA. And we run, regular flood risk assessment on all our assets. Incident reporting improvement, I think I've mentioned that before. This is very, very challenging because obviously our operational colleagues, they are very busy at trying to keep our service running, and they don't necessarily have the time or the expertise or the knowledge to be able to objectively assess what's the weather element of a particular incident. So there is a lot of work to do with that, and we do that with our operational and resilience team. That's ongoing. Our standard, we all love standard as engineer. So we decided in 2023 to have, I think, our first kind of climate adaptation standard to cover the flood risk management and SUDS in TFL. So not only it's got some more onerous requirement when it comes to flood protection on our asset, depending on criticality and condition, but we've also mandated the fact that you have to run regular and frequent flood risk assessment. And on the SUDS part, I think the key element is we've made SUDS our default drainage solution. So any project now at TFL has to deliver SUDS or justify why not, which is kind of the opposite as it was before. And before we had a lot of pushback. SUDS was always seen as something on the top of, but now that's at the default. You can't do that anymore. And the tidal flood defense adaptation projects is just us working with the environmental agency. They already know they have to enhance, upgrade, raise the flood defense, not only the flood barrier, but also all the defense you've got along the Thames by 2070 for the management of the tidal and the fluvial flooding. Is just us helping them and supporting them doing that. Last slide for me, SUDS. I had to put a SUDS slide with nice pictures. I'm quite passionate about SUDS. We've been doing a lot in the last 3-4 years on SUDS. As I said, it's now our default position. We actually have targets in our scorecards in TFL now, and obviously having this requirement coming from the top is proving very, very useful. Obviously, it's bringing not only the water quantity element, but also the water quality element, which is taking more and more headline, especially coming from the pollution coming from highway runoff. So that's solving this problem as well. And obviously the biodiversity and the amenity element. I've also put a picture of the SUDS award we got last year on the good work we've done at Tolworth. I'm very proud of it, so I'll put the picture. That's all for me. I'll now hand over to Jason. So thank you very much. I'll take questions at the end.
Thank you, Nick. I'll just introduce Jason. So Jason Wakefield is the Principal Engineering Leader for TfL, providing strategic leadership for track-based renewals programs for both drainage and track infrastructure on the TfL network. He's worked with the drainage and flood risk industry for about 20 years. His experiences range from undertaking hydraulic modeling for local authorities, for SWMP, I think that's the Historical Management Plans. Yeah, thank you. And master plans for design and construction assurance on multi-million-pound projects on TfL. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, sorry. Thanks, everyone. So, yeah, Nick's kind of gone through the principles for which we manage flood risk at TfL. Really, I'm wanting to then go through how we specifically define and undertake renewals, particularly in London Underground. So, in essence, kind of how we go from finding problems and then going to a resolution. And how we find those problems too, because they're not always massively obvious. So, as Nick previously mentioned, climate change is one of the biggest threats to TfL infrastructure. Also, it's not just, as a lot of people have mentioned today, it's not just about changes in rainfall causing increased flooding, but it's also the impact that drought has on our infrastructure. Shrink and swell of our earth structures has an impact on our track and surrounding structures. And so really, kind of when I came to writing this, it got me kind of really thinking of the fact that management of water really is a fine balance. You can go too far one way, too far another. And so it really is a bit of a battle, to be honest. TfL infrastructure is quite complex, both in age, but also, again, as we've had some discussions in the breakout sessions, with regards to restrictions to access. Access to the TfL network, or the LU network, is limited to engineering hours and possessions. We don't have the ability to work with adjacent lines open. And also, we have no guarantee whatsoever of obtaining possessions any one year or in successive years due to kind of other major projects, public events happening on our network or in London, and unsurprisingly, the fact that we do want to continue to operate a railway and actually have people travelling on our network and paying for the things that we want to do. As with most organisations, again, a bit of a topic that's come up today, we aren't data rich particularly when it comes to drainage. We do have quite significant gaps in sort of easily accessible digital asset data. That means that we can't sort of undertake real sort of a proper sort of automation of our yearly work banks. We do still need to have a real people interface in what we're doing there. An additional challenge as well is the fact that we don't actually have track and drainage sitting under the same roof. They're not the same department. They're not managed by the same departments in both renewals and also maintenance. So we kind of have to manage that sort of process through a case of very much a lot of people management, but also adaptation of the processes that we do to make sure we get the right decisions happening. Also, annualised budgets. We don't have annualised budgets at TfL. It makes it that really difficult to sort of plan things over multiple years. We can't plan things over multiple years. We don't know what money we're getting this year, really, or even next year or the year after, which makes it really difficult to work out sort of efficiencies. Also to have kind of consistency in what we do, and sort of getting into certain locations year after year. Nick mentioned 2021. This delightful example up here is from Acton Town. That was caused by a very, very intense 1 in 170-year storm event, which not only, well, I think it was only a couple of miles wide, and it really, really it really affected the centre of London, but also the east end of the Central Line. We did have quite a few issues on that day, which kept us all very busy. So, project creation. I kind of talked about the kind of finding problems. This is kind of how we go about finding our problems. Again, it's quite a manual process. It's not automated, but it's how we now work out how a project is going to, how we bring a project through each financial year. Sort of the process, the Drainage Capital Works intervention request process, how we overcome a lot of the challenges that I mentioned earlier on, a lot of those kind of relationships we have with other departments. So it's a little bit two-pronged. We have one that's kind of track-driven, which is the Capital Works intervention request. Here we have a track problem raised. Our track maintenance colleagues are fantastic in doing this, raising a problem. Someone from my team, they'll visit site, they'll write a report about it, taking in a lot of physical information from site, but also a lot of information from desktop studies on track quality. We then review that as a panel. That has people from different departments, and we work out sort of a relevant course of action. And unsurprisingly, when we have instability on track, formation issues, quite often that's failing drainage, which is the reason why we've got a track problem. As such, we'll often then sort of undertake a sort of real joined-up approach for looking at a renewal, which will be kind of a drainage and track-based renewal that we'll be putting forward for a future work bank. Admittedly, generally, we can't undertake those at the same time. Then our second prong of that, and I sort of stole the Capital Works intervention request process set up by my track colleagues, is the Drainage Capital Works intervention request, very imaginative. Here is very specifically a drainage problem is identified. We follow exactly the same process as previously. However, because it's solely a drainage problem that has been raised, so flooding of the track, flooding of adjacent land, pretty much 99% of the time, it causes a drainage project to be created rather than a track and drainage project created. So, how we kind of analyse our project. So, again, this feeds very much on from the breakout session earlier. I really had to hold my tongue to stop me saying things because I didn't want to reveal what I was going to say in my presentation. So we very much do look at our drainage catchment, do undertake our analysis on a catchment-based approach. Obviously, significantly smaller catchments than necessarily Network Rail or other areas. But, you know, we can be looking at, say, a 300-metre track renewal or a single flooding issue. We'll maybe be looking at 2,000 to 600 metres worth of a drainage catchment that we'd be analysing, which for us in TfL is fairly large. We'll look at those on criticality. So we have a couple of kind of key areas that we'll be necessarily assessing those on. So we'll take into consideration the 1 in 1,000 year storm with 40% addition for climate change, which is for tunnel portals and shafts, so our kind of most vulnerable infrastructure. Our sort of most basic kind of pass-fail kind of assessment is a 1 in 50 year with no flooding, 50 mil below sleeper level. In reality, you don't pass that. It's unlikely they would accept the design that's been proposed. And then we obviously have the standard sort of 1 in 100 year plus climate change that we all have to consider and look at from our legal obligations to make sure we're not adversely affecting third parties, adjacent land, try and keep it within our network as much as possible. As probably most of you in the room would sort of agree, drainage design and the whole part, very simple. However, ensuring that a drainage design integrates within our network, with our infrastructure, can be constructed is incredibly complex. You know, we typically will try and balance the use or different ways in which we deliver our drainage, so open cut renewal or no dig technology. We try and really sort of mix things up so that we try and get the sort of most cost-effective construction option while also getting the best performing system, but also with the longest design life, but also within the access window that we have. So the real challenge also then comes, sort of as I say after the end there, so the real challenge comes with sequencing and ensuring that the designs can be broken down into sub-catchments. We have restrictions on access. We only get possessions every so often. We can only, in those possessions, deliver maybe 300 metres of drainage, so we need to make sure what we are delivering is not going to adversely affect our network. So it must must reduce flood risk. So then, going into the kind of a little bit more of the finite detail of kind of our delivery of works. So, as mentioned before, I've mentioned a few times, we are significantly restricted when it comes to access. This does have an impact on the way in which we deliver our drainage projects. Engineering hours, we have that readily available to us. However, 2-3 hour window, it's expensive. Quality of work is generally quite poor because you can think you probably only get 3 metres of drainage installed per night. Possessions, they're less easy to come by. However, you end up being able to deliver significantly larger sections of track, larger machinery, more controlled environment, but again, significantly expensive. So it's a real kind of sort of weighing up between those kind of options as to what we do. Admittedly, we are very much now leaning towards possessions. We are also getting more opportunities from the sort of higher up in the organisation to start looking a bit more at blockades and the ability to have longer possessions or longer closures, because for us, a possession is typically just a weekend, so 72 hours or 52-hour closure. Really obvious point there, which embarrassingly enough or weirdly enough was not always completely understood within TfL, is that you need to install from the outfall back, or you must follow some kind of linear progression with your installation works. It's something that is very obvious. It's something we follow now, or insurers followed now, because then if you have to stop work, we do often have to stop work in our sort of renewal program, changing of budgets, reduction of access. We know we have made things better, not worse. Historically, we haven't done that. Things haven't necessarily been quite so succinct, quite so successful. We've had to go back over the last few years and fill a lot of those gaps in to then return things back to where it sort of needs to be. And then a real kind of, particularly from a TfL perspective, a real kind of buzzword at the moment, or a thing that we're really concentrating on, is quality control. Certainly we've just transitioning from the integrated track team being our delivery model, which is Balfour Beatty working with LU and TfL, to the ballasted track team, which is those Balfour Beatty staff being TUPE'd within London Underground. And with that change, I've been able to start sort of instilling this very much right first time attitude. Again, drainage installation, pretty simple. However, it is also very easy to get wrong. And it's also very easy, once you've got it wrong, to bury it and ignore it existed. So getting it right first time before we bury it in the ground is really critical. And we have really quite nicely, hopefully the policies and things will be followed, but we do have quality management plan, a massive increase on our sort of control of quality, control of what's going in the ground, control of how things go in the ground for the next future sort of few years. So it really makes what we're doing be sort of the biggest sort of bang for our buck. So thanks very much for your time. Before I go, just kind of a couple of points for you to kind of take away. So as Nick mentioned, there has been extensive work on setting policy with regards to climate adaptation and flood risk within TfL. SUDs are now a key feature in all works undertaken by TfL. Data collection and analysis is still a real challenge across the organisation, but as heard today, as is with quite a few others. And also one sort of I'm quite proud of is my sort of bit that I've been most involved in, is that track-based project initiation now is outcome-driven, very focused on reducing risk, and really best utilises the limited funding we have available. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.